Ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and this house just ain't no home. Anytime she goes away.
Hi, I'm Paul Quin. You're watching Musicians on the Record. Hit it.
This is huge, musicians on the record. Bring it on.
Welcome to Musicians on the Record. I'm David Ward. You've heard the music, now hear their story. And I'm so excited. We're continuing the theme of business and getting successful in the music business with top entertainment lawyer from Tampa, Florida, from Saxon Gilmore and Carraway. Paul Quin is on the show today. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, David. How are you? Nice to see you again.
I'm great. It's great to see you again, too, and thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it. So in addition to being a lawyer, you're also a drummer, and you've got a great story. I want to talk more about that. And I had the pleasure of meeting you at the NAMM show in January of 2017. Can we start with your story with music, with drumming in particular? How did you fall in love with music and drumming?
Sure. Well, boy, that's a big question. Well, I mean, I think I fell in love with music, and drums was just my vehicle to play music. It wasn't really a love of drumming so much, although that came with time. But I'm the youngest of 5 children. I grew up just outside Liverpool in the UK, the only boy. My eldest sister, who was 17 years older than me, played guitar and sang, and my other sisters played guitar and sang, and so I would tap on the table when they would get around with the family. My youngest sister, who's still 8 years older than me, is a very successful session singer in the UK. She's got multiple gold records, platinum records for doing backing vocals for people.
That's great.
And back in the days, remember when there was that thing called a studio scene?
Right.
When people actually recorded jingles?
Yes.
She recorded thousands and thousands of jingles. So I started playing drums. I remember getting my first pair of drumsticks from Hesse's music store in Liverpool when I was 9 years old.
Wow.
And I drove my parents insane because I never put them down.
Yeah.
So I can remember my dad. Yeah, he was the most patient man in the world, yelling at me because I would always take them in the car. And if you remember back in those days, no seatbelts, right, in the back of the car.
Right.
I would sit forward on the seat and play along with the radio on the headdress of the passenger seat.
Oh, God.
Which would drive him insane.
Sure.
So I remember doing that forever, and me saying, I want drums, and him saying, dream on, because A, it's too loud, and B, you'll lose interest in a week. And I said, no, I don't think I will. So as time went on, I got a snare drum and a hi-hat cymbal, Premier, an old cymbal manufacturer that I don't think are around anymore, called Zinn.
Zinn.
Zinn. I think they were made by Premier, I think, but I could be wrong about it.
Okay.
So, and the goal was learn your rudiments, learn how to read, and show me that you are actually want to do this seriously, and in 12 months we'll buy you a drum.
Wow.
So I did, and I loved it.
Amazing.
And I kept playing it, and I learned my rudiments, and I went for lessons. I had a great teacher in Manchester, a guy called Jeff Riley, who, and I'll tell you, you get attracted to people for the wrong reasons often. I wanted to go to him because he had a book called Matchsticks, which taught you to hold the drumsticks in the matched grip method. Yeah. And I was horrified by the concept of having to play traditional grip. Yeah. So that's the only reason I went to him. And of course, in later life, I played traditional grip. But
oh, do you? All right.
About 50-50, I'm afraid.
Okay.
So about 50-50.
That's great.
But my dad got me a drum kit. I remember I bought it. It was bought from a store in Manchester. It was a 1950s premier marble gray finish drum kit.
Wow, beautiful.
Beautiful. I wish I still had it. Sold it long ago. And, you know, then my parents had a music room. My sister had a music room because she lived at home. She was 8 years older than me. And so she was writing and performing already by that time. And I started doing gigs with her when I was 13.
Wow.
And those gigs, this was the way to start playing, because this is back in the days when the north of England had a cabaret system where there were bars and clubs, working men's clubs, British legions that you could go to and play. And so we would do doubles. She would open at one club on a Friday and close at another club on a Friday. And we would load up the stuff, drive across town, and we'd do Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I started that at the age of 13.
Amazing. And you were her drummer.
I was her drummer and her musical director, although the irony, of course, was at that time I could not read anything but the drum parts, and I knew those anyway. But we would have bass and keyboard parts, piano, organ parts to give to the other musicians at the clubs, and I would take them through the music like I could read it, and I couldn't. I just faked the entire thing.
Fake it till you make it. You're right. You did that good. Yeah.
Fake it till you make it. Yeah. So, and then because of that, I met, and because with her being older and with her becoming more and more successful and not just doing the cabaret stuff, I met musicians who were not my age. So I bypassed that garage band playing Johnny B. Good. Not that there's anything wrong with playing Johnny B. Good, but I bypassed that level of having to play with up-and-coming musicians, and I went straight to playing with seasoned, accomplished players, which was quite scary. It forced me to practice because I was always the worst player in the band.
Got it. So inspiration actually gave you some motivation to get better. Yeah.
Well, and really the motivation was to not look a fool.
Right.
You know, I mean, really, the motivation was, you know, I did not want to go to these events and be unable to play. I can still remember, you know, growing up listening to rock, but kind of having a little affinity to jazz, though. I can remember, and by the way, in those days, growing up in the UK, I only knew two jazz musicians. Okay. I knew Buddy Rich and I knew Martin Drew. And that might be a name that doesn't resonate with you. Martin Drew played drums for Count Basie.
Oh, wow.
And on BBC Two in the 1970s, on a Friday night, 10 o'clock, I'm sorry, I said Count Basie. It was Oscar Peterson. Oscar Peterson had a 30-minute show every Friday night.
Wow.
And I would watch it and just be captivated with the subtlety of this guy playing drums. So, but I remember when I was going out to these clubs being asked to play a shuffle and me having no idea how to do it. And so I'm playing all the way around the beat, and the guy turns around to me and he says, just give me bass drum on 1 and 3, snare drum on 2 and 4, and just play it straight. And so I kind of blustered my way into it and, you know, learn on the job.
And was this jazz music that you were playing with your sister's band? Was it rock? Was it a combo?
It was working men's club covers. So we were doing Neil Sedaka, Neil Diamond, Carole King, Carly Simon, anything you could do that, you know, people would know.
Yeah.
You know, the Carpenters.
And so what year was this around, Paul?
I'm guessing somewhere around 1978.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Very good.
78, 79. I was born in 64.
Okay.
So somewhere around, that's when I first started doing that work. I was still in high school while doing that.
Yeah,
so
at 13. Amazing.
Yeah, and I went to an Irish Christian Brothers Catholic all-boys high school. And so I would get home with my sister. My parents were pretty cool about these things. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. So by the time I came along and the only boy, they were a lot easier on me than everybody else.
Right.
So yeah, they would. I'd get home at 1 o'clock or 1:30, and my dad would wake me up at 7:30 the next morning to go to school.
Wow. So burning it at both ends, it sounds like, right? Yeah.
And the deal was, don't complain about being tired.
Right. Right.
Because if I did that, then there was a chance he would pull that rug.
Sure. Right. And in addition to your sister, anyone else musical in your family?
Not at that level, but my sister's daughter is tremendous, a phenomenal singer, goes by the name of R-A-H-H. You should go look her up.
Yeah.
She's magnificent. She's just come off the road as backing vocalist for Dave Stewart.
Wow.
She's doing the Annie Lennox.
Sure.
She is a great writer, also a successful actress. Then her brother, my nephew Joe Jr., plays for a band called the Christians in the UK, very successful band. He's a monster talent.
Wow.
His brother, my nephew Dan, is just had the summer hit for Europe last year with a dance tune. He records under the name of Dan Harkner, Harkna.
That's great.
And then my nephew Anthony is a great singer, great bass player. So yeah, it's my siblings' children went into the industry, and my sister and I.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So obviously, being from Liverpool, being 13, you were born in the year of the Beatles. But what was that like growing up there? And obviously, the myth and the legend of the Beatles.
Well, it's funny. I was born outside Liverpool, but that didn't mean you could escape the impact of the Beatles. But I think it was hard to be a Beatles fan when you were growing up there.
Sure.
Because they were so important. And that teenage rebellion, for me and a lot of my contemporaries, meant we didn't like the Beatles.
Sure.
Now, that's what we said out loud, but most of us went home and still listened to Abbey Road because we thought it was a masterpiece. Now, I got to say, as I've got older, the Beatles are maybe, have never been out of my top 5 favorite artists.
Sure.
And music is absolutely timeless.
Yeah.
And it goes to the advice I give to clients all the time. Production is not the key. Competence on the instrument is not the key to success in this industry. It's all about the song. It's all about the song. Have a great song and then play the music to support the song, and success will come to you. People talk, I'm lucky I work with Liberty DeVito, plays with Billy Joel.
Yeah.
And Lib will tell you absolutely that Billy is one of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century. And he's a great piano player. He's a great singer. But frankly, there are better piano players in every city in America. There are maybe better singers. But he wrote great songs. Right. And that's the key to success. Absolutely. Have great songs.
Yeah, that's great advice. And obviously, Billy Joel, epic songwriter. And for those who don't know, Liberty DeVito is, of course, his drummer for many years. And so,
more than 30.
More than 30. Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah. So you're growing up in this environment. You've got a passion and a love for drums. You're gigging with your sister. At that point, what was your sort of dream? What was your goal that you wanted to do with music?
Oh, I wanted to do it full time, and I wanted to be a session guy. That's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to go on the road and live that moment, but I wanted to record. And so my sister, who was doing lots of jingles, ultimately I ended up getting a connection with that studio, Pluto Studios in Manchester. And I ended up doing a lot of recording there. And then I did some recording at Strawberry Studios in Stockport and just got to know that whole Manchester, Liverpool music scene.
Yeah.
And, we all talk about how much the music industry changes, David.
Sure.
What doesn't change is success is still absolutely dependent upon relationships.
Yes. Right.
And I learned that lesson as a young man. Were there better drummers than me in the Manchester, Liverpool area? You bet there were. I looked at drummers, names that don't probably mean anything to you, but drummers like a guy called Dave Hassel, drummers like a guy called Paul Burgess, Steve Gibson. Steve Gilbert, excuse me, these people blew me away. And I would look, they were a lot older than me, but I would look at them and think, honestly, I could never play like them. I will never be that good. But I always worked. And I always worked because I was easy to get along with and I was competent. Not every gig, not every session wants you to play like Billy Cobham. Right? Most of them really want you to play a nice, solid in the pocket, 2 and 4 on the snare drum, and keep good time and play the right fills at the right time and play for the song. Listen to the song and play what fits the song. And I could do that. So I always worked.
And we'll go back to your music story, but I also want you to put your lawyer hat on for a second, the way that you help musicians. That piece of networking, I think, is so big and so important. What do you feel like the top 2 or 3 keys to good networking for musicians are?
Well, there are plenty of networking opportunities for musicians to go to places, and not necessarily concerts, but clinics, places where musicians and producers will be. And I think the key to a good relationship in networking is not dissimilar from what makes you a good musician in a band situation. And that key is listening. Right? So when you're playing in a band, you should be listening to everybody else more than you should be listening to yourself, because it's about the overall sound.
Right.
When you go to a networking event, or if you meet somebody that you think can be beneficial to your career, the very last thing you ever want to do is talk about yourself and how you need their help, because it drives people away.
Sure.
And people need to understand that networking is not a monolith. You don't place your networking monolith down and it's complete. You build a wall. You build the wall brick at a time. So in doing that, think to yourself, I'm going to meet this person at this event. I'm going to introduce myself. Hey, I just wanted to say hi. I love your work. Thanks for the clinic. I did have a question about this, if you don't mind. Then if they ask you who you are, you've got the opportunity to say, well, I'm a local guitar player. And great, okay, then walk away. Next time you get the chance to meet them, say, hey, I don't know if you remember, but we met at this time. And they might go, I don't remember, but that's fine. Ask your question and walk away. Next time you see them, they'll say, oh, hey, yeah, I remember you. Then you can start to generate it, because it's a relationship. Look at it. You don't meet a girl and ask her to marry you. Networking is a relationship that takes time. You build it up from one meeting to the next meeting to the meeting after. Remember people, and it's hard work. Self-marketing is hard work. You should go home and you should take notes. Listen, I've been doing this for 30 years. When I leave the NAMM show, which is the ultimate networking for all musicians, when I'm on the plane on the way home, I get out a pad of paper and I write down the name of every single person I met while I was there. And I go through my business cards that I keep in my bag. And when I get to my office the next day, I send everybody a 2-line email. Great to meet you. Nice to keep in touch. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate. Give me a shout.
Beautiful. Perfect right there. Yeah.
I'm not asking them for anything. And you shouldn't, because people are, especially musicians whose time is so precious, and they're pulled in so many directions that, if as soon as you ask them for something, there's a good chance they'll just walk away.
Sure. Right. Yeah. So if I can then, that's fantastic advice. I love it. If I could go back then to your story of growing up in Liverpool, being in the music business, gigging, you're now in the studio playing because you've made it to that level. Where did it go from there?
Okay, so I started doing jingles. I started doing the odd sessions. I started playing for different people. There were different studios that were calling me to help them out, which was wonderful. As a result, I met people. And as a result of meeting people, I got asked to do more and more gigs. I also, at 17, made the decision that I should start auditioning for people. And I had some delusions of grandeur.
Okay.
I would buy the local music magazines which in those days was Melody Maker,
Sure.
New Musical Express, and Sounds magazine. And Sounds magazine in the wanted ads always had bands looking for drummers. And I would cut right through everything and go directly to name band seeks drummer for touring and recording. And then I would apply.
Yeah.
And I auditioned for a lot of people. And I'll tell you something else. I never got a single gig I ever auditioned for.
Wow. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I have no idea. But I think because but I got callbacks, multiple auditions, second or third audition, and then they went with somebody else. And, you know, I mean, I was young, and that could have hurt me a little.
Okay.
And maybe I wasn't as good as the guy that got the gig, you know. But I remember auditioning for a metal band called Diamond Head. And that was actually an awkward situation because I was playing in another band at the time. And I secretly went to this audition for Diamond Head and ran into my band's bass player who had driven a friend down for the audition. And he looked and went, "What are you?" Oh! I auditioned for a band called Big Audio Dynamite.
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yes.
With Mick Jones from The Clash.
Sure. Wow.
And I got 2 callbacks for them, and it was a pain in the backside because it was in London, and so I would have to take the train at great expense, and then the subway and go out to this rehearsal room they had, and you know, rehearse and play, and they would record all their auditions.
Oh wow!
And in those days, it was just Mick and a bass player. No one else had joined the band yet.
Okay.
And, you know, frankly, Mick was so high all the time in those auditions that I was thinking to myself, even if they offer me this gig, I'm not sure I'm going to take it. Yeah. But they didn't offer it me, so I didn't have to worry about that. Okay. And then a little while later, you know, they had probably 6 or 7 top 10 hits.
Sure. Amazing. Right.
Yeah, so I did that, and then, but, you know, gradually met other musicians, and I joined a Manchester rock band. I think I was 16 or 17 at the time, called Tora Tora, who later became, now there's an American Tora Tora too, but we were there. Interestingly enough, the drummer I replaced in that band, it was his band through high school, left them to play in a rock band from London called Titan, Tytan, and then left them to audition for and got the job in AC/DC.
Oh, wow.
So his name was Simon Wright, and Simon played with AC/DC for a good while. He left them and played with Ronnie James Dio for a long time. And now I think he's playing in one of the Queen's rights, the one with the original singer.
Amazing.
And, you know, it's funny, I hadn't seen him for maybe 20 years, and I ran into him at NAMM.
Yeah.
And he was just, last time he saw me, I was living in Manchester and playing in a pop band. And I just met him looking at me like, "What are you doing here?" So it's a small industry. Yeah, I played in a band that had some top 10 hits in the UK. And it was as a result of that band that made me decide I should become interested in the law, because we got so badly ripped off through signing bad deals. You sign a bad deal every now and again. And I'll tell you, I was 18, or 19, I think, somewhere around there. Too young anyway. Yeah. And the story we've all heard a million times. You know, I got a contract put in front of me, and I didn't even read it. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to say I read it and I just didn't understand it, but it wouldn't have mattered what was written in the agreement because I just didn't read it. I didn't care. You know, I thought, well, I don't care if I don't make any money. Right. I'm going to be doing this thing that I love, and this will lead to great things and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, although I didn't care about the money, I did start spending it.
Got it. Yes.
And so, you know, ended up in a bad situation. But we had a manager that allowed, under the management agreement, he could take 17.5% from our income 7 times.
Wow.
So the label would pay him, and he would take 17.5%. And then he would pay each member of the band and take 17.5% each time.
Ouch. That's quite a cut.
So, Yeah, but you know what? It said he could do that in the contract.
Right.
So, I can't criticize him too much, although it was a super shady thing to do. But, it's not like it was hidden in there,
Right.
So, but I mean, it let me know that the music industry, while it has the greatest people in the world, not all the people in the music industry are great people.
Right.
So it made me decide I needed to protect others.
Yeah, and I want to certainly talk about that transition from music to the law, but you do both. I guess I'm curious from your point of view of, you hear story after story, and sorry to hear you had to go through that, but what's up with the music business managers? I mean, story after story, you hear that of musicians getting ripped off. Yeah, I mean, what do you think that's about?
Well, it's funny. I think that they fall into different categories.
Mm-hmm.
The way the industry is structured, it's not structured really to benefit the creative people.
Right.
So generally speaking, most label deals, overwhelmingly most label deals are going to be bad because you don't have any leverage to negotiate a better deal. And the industry standards for an up-and-coming and not yet established artist are terrible. But that's just the way they are. And I'm okay with that because at least you know what you're getting.
Right.
The problem we find more often than not is there are a lot of people who want to be in this industry. They want it, but they don't have the skill, talent, or connections to do it.
Right.
So what they do is they become managers. And they think that gives them some inroad into doing things. And what they'll do is they'll hook their wagon to a local artist they find who they think is talented. But what they don't understand is the only way a manager can make a substantial living is either to represent 40 or 50 local gigging acts, which would be an ungodly amount of work.
Absolutely.
A lot of these acts are playing on a Friday night for $500. Well, this manager is going to take, 15%?
Right.
Well, $75 is not, if you've got one artist,
Sure.
what you going to do,
Right.
So you need to have a ton of artists, and to keep them working and booking and gigging is a fairly thankless task.
Sure.
Or the manager has to have one or two major artists.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's almost impossible to do. So what happens is the young up-and-coming wannabe managers will find one or two artists. They will work, maybe they'll even work hard, but they'll suddenly discover that they're working 60 hours a week and they're making $200. So what they do is they start to gouge their artists. And I've seen this, not personally, but I see it from up-and-coming people who are my clients.
Yep.
They'll say, their managers will say, well, I want 20% instead of 15. I want 20% of this. And now also I want 20% of this. If somebody gives you a guitar, for an endorsement deal, I want to own 20% of that guitar. I want you to get me one too so I can sell it. Right. Well, people just need to understand that that's not how you're going to make money.
Right.
So find an artist. If you're desperate to be in the business, find an artist you love and believe on, and be prepared to put in a couple of years of sweat equity. And don't think there's no get rich quick schemes in the music industry anymore.
Right.
I don't know if there ever were, frankly.
Right. Yeah, and kind of in life as well, right? So can I ask, in your opinion, who do you think a good music or band managers were back past and present?
I don't even know. There are a couple of management companies that I do like. I mean, and there's a few, but I like Red Light Management. I think Red Light does a terrific job. And, I work with one of their guys who represents Alan Stone. And I think he represents OAR as well. He's a class guy. And he cares about the music and he cares about his artists. And I'll tell you that this is the kicker to me that made me decide that this was a good guy. By the way, nobody hires management firms. People hire managers. The same way people don't hire law firms, they hire lawyers.
Right.
It's about personal relationships.
Yes.
But, when a band gets this guy's attention to the extent where he's investigating them to see if they're interested in the management deal, the first time he talks to them, Guess what the very first question he asked him?
I don't know.
First question he asked them, do you have a lawyer?
Ah, okay.
And if they say no, he says, go get a lawyer, retain a lawyer, and then call me back and we'll talk.
Interesting. Great advice. Yeah.
So you see, now that lets the artist know, and it lets their lawyer know, that this is a guy who's not looking to take advantage of somebody who doesn't know the ins and outs of the industry.
Right.
And you know, that says a lot to me.
Sure.
You know, it says a lot to me that this is somebody with integrity. So, you know, and listen, there are a million great small managers. Mm-hmm. There are people that do a great job, but they are lost in a sea of those who don't know what they're doing and want to take advantage of others. And you know, one of the problems with the internet is there was a time when if you wanted a management contract, you would have to have one drawn up by the management company's lawyer. Mm-hmm. But now you want a management contract, just go look online. Yeah. You know, you'll find one. Yeah. And the problem is contracts are specific to the talent of the manager. So, you know, the manager that gets 20% is the guy that can call Quincy Jones and Clive Davis and say, hey, man, I was hanging out with your daughter the other day. How's your golf score? You know, these things, right? It's those contacts that warrant that 20%, right? It's the people that can call Madison Square Gardens and say, I've got an act and we need to book it.
Right.
But because these contracts are available, every Tom, Dick, or Harry that's had no success and knows nobody wants 20%. And they want to sign somebody to, you know, in every contract there's going to be, usually on the first or second page, there's a heading that says territory, right? Which areas is this going to cover? Okay. Well, every Tom, Dick, and Harry manager is going to write the universe. So I want to know, what contacts do you have in Japan?
Sure.
Or Europe or South America, such that my client should sign an exclusive deal with you where he can't sign with anybody else who actually does have contacts in those places. Yeah. And overwhelmingly, these guys come back with, well, I know someone who knows someone, and don't worry, it'll be great.
Sure.
No, it won't.
Right.
You know, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
I did one with a guy where we ended up arguing for so long that we ended up restricting the territory to the greater Tampa Bay area. Because he didn't have a contact out of Tampa Bay. So guess what? We're not giving you the right to manage this if you can't even call a venue in Miami and get me a gig.
Right.
You know?
Amazing. Yeah.
So really, the job is just to be smart and make sure no one takes it.
Yeah. To me, that's golden advice for musicians, up-and-coming musicians, to pay attention to when choosing a manager. So for you, Paul, really out of that difficult situation, it inspired you because, you know, from what I know about you, you really have the artist's best interest in mind and really work hard to protect them. How did that go from the music to the law for you?
Well, I dropped out of high school to go on the road with Territoris. So I had not even finished high school.
Yeah.
So after joining this band and then multiple other bands, and I played in Europe, I played in the US, I played in New York, and I decided I should at least graduate from high school. So at the time I was living in South Manchester, and there was a community college called Field and Park, which allowed me to take a course to apply to university or college. It was a 1-year course to graduate from high school. It wasn't really like a GED, but it was the equivalent. Okay. So I applied to that course and got in. And the best thing about that course was it didn't stop me from playing any music that I was already playing. Nice. So I just went to college for 10 hours a week and just kept playing music.
Okay.
And I'll tell you a funny story is I was walking past that college and thinking, you know, I really should graduate from high school. Maybe I should do it, you know. And one day, just, you know, you have those momentary decisions. You turn left instead of right.
Yes.
And I went to the college and thought, I'm going to ask somebody. And after about 5 minutes of watching these people milling around, this guy in a suit comes out and says, can I help you with anything? I said, you know, I could. I'm a local musician, but you know, I think I should. I didn't graduate high school, but I think I should, and I'm interested in doing a course or something. And he said, "What do you play?" I said, "Well, you know, I'm a drummer, and I play in whatever the band was at the time." He said, "Well, I'm familiar with them." He said, "My name is," and I don't remember his name. He said, "I used to be the drummer with the Small Faces."
Oh my God!
I was like, really? He said, yeah. Why don't we go and sit in my office and I'll talk to you about what we have going on at the school. So I went, I sat down and he said, we have this course that's an access course to college. I think you'd be perfect for it. Why don't I set you up with an interview with that course? And I said, okay. So went back for the interview. They let me in and that was all she wrote. So
Amazing.
I applied to college as a result of that course. But I was playing a lot of music in the Manchester area and I didn't want to go anywhere else. So they told me, to apply to Manchester University, which is an Ivy League school. And they said, you won't get in, but you should apply anyway, right? You won't get in because, it's very traditional and it's this, that, and the other. So I went for an interview. I applied to do American Studies degree. The only reason I wanted to do that was because for the third year, they sent you to an American college. And I thought that sounded pretty cool.
Sure. Really.
So I went for an interview to get in there. And halfway through the interview, one of the guys interviewing said, excuse me, I hope you don't mind me asking you a question, but aren't you the drummer for so-and-so? I've seen you around town. And I said, yeah, I am. And he said, well, what do you want to come to college for? So I explained what happened with the management deal. I explained what happened with the music industry. And I explained that I wanted to come and I wanted to get a degree and I wanted to keep playing music. But, this was an interesting area for me. And he said, well, we'd like to offer you a place.
Wow.
So, it was as easy as that. And
Amazing.
So I got into an Ivy League school, did my junior year at Chapel Hill in North Carolina, and saw the unbelievable opportunities there were to play live music in the U.S. as opposed to the UK at that time.
Sure.
We're talking the middle 1980s.
Okay.
And so decided to come back for graduate school. And, of course, the only way I could come to I actually wanted to come back so I could play music.
Yeah.
But the only way I could legally do that was to go to graduate school. So I applied to schools that were in places with music.
Okay.
And got into Columbia in New York, got into Emory in Atlanta,
Wow.
but with no money. And as a foreigner, I wasn't allowed to work.
Oh, okay.
So try living in New York and playing Columbia fees and not having a job.
Not going to happen, right?
So instead, I took a small academic step down. I hope the people at this school won't hate me for saying that, but it is a step down from Columbia.
Sure.
And I went to LSU. And they gave me money. They gave me a teaching assistantship and a tuition waiver, and I went in there and I taught American history for a couple of years while playing in a million bands.
Wow. What were you playing at that point?
Drums.
Yeah.
And the blues mostly.
Yeah. Nice.
So I had house residencies at a couple of the great blues bars in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Became friends with drummers like Terrence Higgins. I don't know if you're familiar with Terrence. Terrence plays for the Dirty Dozen brass band, Dr. John,
Yeah.
a ton of people. And he at the time was playing in a band called Funk House. And, just started playing. I played in a blues band called Rudy's Shoes with the great Denise Broomfield, Jimmy Sion, and my good friend Ali Fox, who's unfortunately since passed away. But, we toured and I pretended to be in graduate school. But then, decided I got married and decided that it was time to, I was never going to stop playing, but I decided I should think about doing this entertainment law thing and protecting musicians more appropriately. So I applied to law schools that I could afford to go to.
Wow.
And the University of Iowa foolishly let me in. Iowa is a top 20 law school. It was then. I think it still is. It was a top 20 law school. But the cost of law school is directly proportional to the desirability to live there.
Sure.
So Iowa was cheap.
Yeah, there you go, right? After all is said and done, it's the same piece of paper anywhere you go, right?
It is the same piece of paper, but I got to tell you, it broadens your chances of getting a better job.
Yes.
Depending upon where you go. And I got hired out of law school by a multinational, very large product liability firm in Kansas City.
Okay.
And I went there for 4 years where they taught me how to actually practice law, because law school doesn't really do that.
Right.
And then I moved to Tampa with that firm, but did not like the Tampa office.
Okay.
And so started looking around. And the firm I'm at now, Saxon Gilmore, they said, why don't you come here and we'd like to support you to develop the practice area that you actually want to develop. So I came here and they said, go do music. I criticize the internet sometimes, right? But the truth of the matter is, in the absence of the internet, you could not be a music business lawyer unless your office was in Los Angeles, New York, or Nashville.
Right.
But as times have changed, and musicians rarely go see their lawyers. Right? They call them on the phone or they Skype them.
Right.
It has not hindered me. I don't plug. A lot of lawyers do record plugging. I don't do that because I'm in the wrong place for it.
Okay.
But it's not hindered me in everything else. And it's actually been quite a draw because we all know lawyers are ungodly expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just are. Lawyers are expensive.
Right.
But my rate, a lawyer's rate is set by the geographic area in which he or she resides.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm at a respectable, very well-respected, mid-sized law firm, 15 lawyers. You know, I have a very good education. I graduated near the top of my class from a top 20 law school. And I have very high-level music business clients.
Yeah.
But if my office was in Los Angeles and nothing changed, I was at the same size firm, had the same education and the same clients, my hourly rate would be more than double what the Tampa market will allow me to charge.
Right.
So, you know, the lawyers, the clients I have in Los Angeles or in Nashville or in New York, you know, it's a selling point because they know me.
Right.
They know who my clients are. They know the level of my work.
Yeah.
And I'm 50% of the price of the guy they just came from. So
it's a good deal, right? Yeah. So and the internet has really allowed you to go worldwide, right?
It has, yeah. And I have clients in the UK. I have a client in Germany. I have a client in France. I have a lot of clients in LA. And, you know, they called me for a little while. They called me the drummer's lawyer, which didn't make me, I mean, I love drummers, but it didn't make me necessarily happy. I also wanted to represent other musicians because there was one occasion when a guitar player said to me, well, I'd love you to help me, but I know you only represent drummers. I said, no, I do not. You know, I represent any musician that's got a problem. So,
that's right.
But, you know, I write for Modern Drumming. You know, I don't know if I was in the last two, actually, editions of Modern Drummer. In fact, I think I have one. Look at this.
Yes, please. Bring that over.
There you go. The one with the great Steve Gadd on the cover.
Fantastic. Yeah.
I'm in this. I represent a wonderful drummer called Russ Miller. And Russ does a column in Modern Drummer. And he asked me to help him on a two-part column talking about when you should hire a lawyer and trying to raise musicians' knowledge of the industry and the business.
Sure.
You know, because one of the weaknesses, I think, in a lot of music education is they focus on musicianship and then they don't focus on the marketing, the networking, and the business side of things. Now, yeah, they might have a contract class, but how is it taught? They might have a copyright class, but how is it taught? And is there sufficient emphasis placed there? Because what we've discovered is that there are tons of musicians who are great players, but who don't know the first thing about how to protect themselves in publishing. They don't know the first thing about how to read a contract.
Right.
They don't know what that language means. And you know, contracts are complicated.
Sure.
And they're written frequently in a manner that's impenetrable.
Right.
Now, listen, I read contracts sometimes, and there'll be a paragraph in there that's so badly drafted. It might be 18 or 19 lines in one sentence.
Oh, my God.
I think, how can anyone know what this means?
Right,
you know?
right.
So, you know, and a lot of those music programs don't do a good enough job. And frankly, they don't do a good enough job.
Yeah.
Now, there are exceptions, of course. You know, there are some schools that do a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
But there are others that don't. And one of the ironies is a lot of those schools will tell you they do a great job. But then when you meet their students will say, I've never heard that before.
Wow. Yeah. And so when somebody comes to you, they call you, they set up an appointment, they come to see you, they hire you for their lawyer as a musician. What's some of the first couple of things that you advise them to do?
Well, it depends what stage they're at in their career, David.
Okay.
If they're just starting out, I need to know, A, that they're serious, and B, that they have some kind of financial backing. It's a business. And if you're going to end up being self-employed, right, as a musician. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be, unless you're going to join an orchestra, but still, you're going to be an independent contractor, and you're going to be self-employed.
Right.
Nobody would go into business, whatever their business is. I don't care if you're fixing toilets, painting walls, whatever it is, without some kind of financial backing. But it amazes me the number of musicians that want to start their band or start their career, and they don't have $50. They don't have anything. And I say, no, you need to have money in the bank to launch your career, because there are certain things you have to do, and you have to do them now. So let's assume, though, we have somebody that actually has revenues, making money as a musician. It doesn't matter how much it is, but, if they don't have another job, that's ideal, right? So let's say that they're getting by.
Okay.
The first piece of advice I'm going to give them is they need to form some kind of business entity. They need to have an LLC or maybe an S corp, but they need to have some kind of entity, and they should own it with somebody else. So they should give a small percentage share to somebody else, because it's going to give them tax advantages, and it's going to give them liability advantages. This may come as a shock to you, but in the United States, lots of people get sued.
I've never heard that.
No, it's a shock, and I realize that most people are not prepared for such bad news.
Right.
But having an LLC can protect you, because if you do all your business on behalf of the LLC, that's who's going to get sued, and that means they can't come after your car, your guitar, your drum kit, because those will be personally owned by you. So, these are really important things, and people need to get that set up when they start. They also need to have a sense of what they mean by success. Everybody needs to have a definition of success as they go forward in their business.
Yeah.
So, if your definition of success is, I need to be as big as Bruno Mars, I want to be Prince, I want to play venues to 50,000 people, and I want to sell them out. Okay, then we need a plan on how we're going to get there.
Right.
And we also need to understand that the chances of getting there are pretty small. Right? I'm not saying it won't happen, but I'm saying, that the streets are lined with people that don't make it that far.
Yes. Yeah.
I will also, in my role as a consultant, try and talk people down from that as a definition of success.
If it's an unrealistic goal.
Well, even if it's not unrealistic, why set yourself up for failure, right? So I try and suggest to people that success is, do I do this full time? Can I pay my bills? Can I drive a car? And can I get health insurance? And can I put a little money on one side for a rainy day?
Right.
And if you can do all that without having to take a day job or 10 bar or be a painter and decorator, then that, I think, is success.
Absolutely.
Right? So then what we have to decide is where do you want to be in 5 years? And lots of people have that idea as to where they want to be in 5 years. But unless you also know where you want to be in 3 years, where you want to be in 2 years, where you want to be in 1 year, where you want to be in 6 months, and where you want to be in 30 days, you cannot get there. Otherwise, it's just a pipe dream. Because I can sit here right now and tell you, 5 years' time, David, I want to be playing with a band that's so big, we sell out stadiums. Well, if I've got no plan as to how to get there, it's just a pipe dream.
Right.
So I need to know in 30 days, I need to have made contact with all these people. I need to have my business set up. I need to have a publishing company. If I'm a writer, I need to join a performing rights society. I'm going to decide whether it's CSAC or is it going to be BMI? Is it going to be ASCAP? I'm going to understand how the publishing industry works, because chances are I can't afford to hire somebody to explain everything to me.
Right.
So in 30 days, that's what I'm going to do. In 6 months, I'm going to be playing with 3 different bands at least once a week, right? And I'm going to start that. In a year, I'm going to have identified a band or a musician that I need to hitch my wagon to, right? And I'm going to make that happen. And, because if you're a session guy, if you're a writer and a songwriter, then you have much more control.
Yes.
You are a session guy, You got to decide what you want to do, and you also have to decide what your competition is. And to do that, you have to have a really good sense of what your own strengths and weaknesses are, right? Because if you can play like Virgil Donati, right? If you play like Mike Mangini, right? If that's who you play, you need to understand there's only 3 bands in the world that will hire you, right? Because if you get your country gig and you start playing that 7/4 polyrhythm with the double flammaratamacu diddle in the middle of your, you're going to get fired immediately, you know? If you decide riding on the crash cymbal or riding on your China cymbal is an appropriate way to record with the girl singer that's just hired you, you're never going to work again. And one of the, this is a very small business. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody talks about everybody.
Yeah.
Now, the good thing about drummers is they tend to be supportive of each other. They do more so than any other musician.
Yes.
But remember, you get a bad reputation, it's almost impossible to undo it.
Yeah.
So, having said that, get your strengths. I don't care how good you are, right? I don't care. There's someone who can play better than you. So identify your strengths. And then the best strength I can tell people to work on is to be a nice guy or a nice girl. Yeah. Take care of your own business. You don't have to let anyone walk on you, right? That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But be professional. Be prepared. Be on time. Be sober. And be supportive. Says, I can help you with that. And don't be dogmatic. Politics is a good thing to avoid when you're on the bus.
Right.
Insisting everybody watches your movie or on the bus. Insisting the only playlist on Spotify is yours. Right. Telling everybody else their music's terrible, right?
Right.
Unless you're the band leader, you'll just get fired.
Right.
If your goal is to just do one tour, then just be an ass.
Right.
But if your goal is to do more than one tour, be cool, be easygoing, be funny, but be competent as well. None of those things will substitute for the fact that if you can't keep time, right? Or you can't stay in the pocket, or you can't play the gig. You can't keep your gig. But if you can do those things, what is it you bring to the table that will get you hired? That gets above somebody that might be a better player than you.
Right. So part of the hang is an important piece, right? And I love that, being a good person, a team player, really important.
The hang is ridiculously important. You need, and you need to be a good reader of people. You need to be able to look at people and get a sense of what it is they want to hear from you. And I'm not suggesting that, you become a yes man. In fact, you don't. Right. But you can always disagree politely. And you don't always have to disagree, Right. I have a strong feeling that a maturity issue is having that realization one day where you don't have to prove you're right.
Yes. Right.
Sometimes just knowing in your own head that you're right is sufficient. Right? You don't have to convince everybody else.
That's right.
Just know you're right.
So the business piece, it sounds really important, and protecting and teaching musicians about their best interests. Is that part of what the sessions.org is, because you're part of that organization?
The Sessions is a great organization that came out of Jules Follett's experiences in doing a photographic book about drummers. The idea was, when she did that, she discovered so many musicians that didn't understand the business. So she formed a not-for-profit company, and we hire the best and the brightest musicians and business people, and we go into music schools. We do 8 to 10 a year all over the world, and we do a panel presentation where we talk to these kids and young adults and young aspiring musicians about what they need to know to survive in the music industry. Okay. And, there are a lot of panels. Ours is unique for a variety of ways. One of the ways our panel is unique is we also do a jam session at the end. So we bring all these major guys to sit on the panel. And who's calling me right now? We bunch of major guys to sit on the panel. And then what happens is at the end of it, the students who have attended get to come up on the stage and play with them.
Wow.
And, if you go to thesessions.org and look down the list of the people that we've had on our panels, and realize that you can get up and play with Ralphie Armstrong, with Bernard Purdie, with J.R. Robinson, with Peter Erskine, with Michael Thompson, with David Garfield. You can get up and play with these guys. We did a sessions event at Musicians Institute in LA, where we had David Garfield, who's George Benson's musical director. I mean, marvelous piano player. I mean, plays with the band Charisma, a storied player. And then Michael Thompson, also on the panel, who's a legendary guitar player and played with just everybody. In fact, I saw he posted something on Facebook from like a look at the charts from sometime in the late 1980s. And he was playing guitar on 5 of the songs that were in the top 10.
Wow, unbelievable.
So we have these guys on the panel. And then I asked David, I said, well, look, for the jam, can you call a couple of guys?
Yeah.
And bring them in, to do the jam with the kids. And so we ended up with David on piano, Michael Thompson on guitar. Then he also called Tony Polizzi, who came to play guitar. Tony plays with, he did play with Natalie Cole. But he was also the guitar player on American Idol for 2 seasons.
Wow.
Then he called John Pena to come in and play bass, who's a legendary LA bass player. And then called Eric Marienthal, multi-Grammy award-winning sax player, to come be the sax player for the jam. So, this jam band has sold 100 million records.
Wow, unbelievable.
So, I mean, it was just absurd. Yeah, so the sessions, we give these presentations with the panel. We have the great Don Famularo as our MC, the most inspiring man I know. And I've known him for many years, and he truly is that inspirational dude. Yeah. And so we have him, and, if he can't get everybody going, then nobody can.
Right.
And it's a great deal. And on that core panel, we also have Liberty DeVito when he's available from Billy Joel's band. We have Christine Ullman, who is from Saturday Night Live band. She's done more than 20 years in the Saturday Night Live band. We sometimes have Rick Drum, who's the ex-president of Dario. Sometimes we have Carlos Guzman, who is a great production manager. He's currently doing Barry Gibb, but in the past he's done Stevie Wonder and all these other people.
Wow.
And then we bring in, clients and friends, whether it's Darryl Jones or Kenny Aronoff or Peter Erskine or J.R. Robinson or all these other folks. We bring them in and they share their wisdom. And it's been killer.
And so important, that knowledge and information from, some of these legends that you're talking about who have made it in the music business and really passing their wisdom along to others. That's really incredible.
David, I can sit on a panel and tell kids all day, you need to have a lawyer to protect your interests.
Right.
But when Ralphie Armstrong or Peter Erskine sits up there and goes, no, you really need to have a lawyer, they all go, okay, I should write that down.
Right.
So there's a huge benefit of those folks having them involved.
Absolutely. And when is the next gig for you with the sessions.org?
We usually go quiet over the summer.
Okay.
Because the schools are not in, So we've had a pretty heavy fall. We actually did a one at the Paris Symphony in March.
Yes.
We had Manu Katché sitting in with us at that event. And then we also did one at a music school in Bavaria in Germany at the same time. Of course, we did the NAMM show.
Yes.
And we did a couple of others in places I don't remember since then. I know in the fall we've got another one in Nashville.
Okay.
Don't know who'll be on that panel yet. And I know we have one in Pennsylvania coming up in September.
That's great. Awesome.
And then, we had, there'll be a couple more before the end of the year too. And, people just need to go to thesessions.org and check it out. Or, if you're more of a Facebook person, it's called The Sessions Panel on Facebook. Go find us and like us. And, you'll see the videos, you'll see Dom being a goofball and everything else we do.
That's right. And I saw a video of you doing a killer Purdie shuffle, so that was great. Thank you for that. Did you actually get to, because I know Bernard Purdie has been part of the sessions at times, did you actually get to meet him and play together with him?
I've known Bernard for a long time. Bernard is a client of mine too.
Okay.
I love him like a grandpa. He's a wonderful guy, and he loves my daughter. My daughter loves Bernard. Actually, I got to play at a sessions event in Detroit that Bernard was on the panel.
Wow.
I got to double drum. We had 2 drum kits. So I played Josie, the Steely Dan song Josie, with Ralph Armstrong from Mahavishnu Orchestra on bass.
My God.
And Bernard and I playing the drum part to Josie. So yeah, that's a little bucket list moment.
That's great. That's incredible. Very nice. And you're also involved with another organization called Little Kids Rock. You're doing all kinds of great stuff. Can you tell us about that organization, Paul?
I am. Little Kids Rock grew out of the brainchild of a guy from New Jersey called David Wish.
Okay.
Little Kids Rock works from the premise that as schools cut music departments, we damage the education of children. Not only is it fun to play music, but it actually clearly helps them to have better academic achievement.
Sure.
So David started this not-for-profit called Little Kids Rock. And what our goal is to start Little Kids Rock programs in the public school system, volunteer teacher, and we will provide these kids with instruments that they get to keep for free. And so far, since this charity has started, we've put musical instruments in the hands of over 300,000 kids.
That's incredible. It's great.
And I sit on the Florida Council for Little Kids Rock, not the National Council, but, it's a marvelous charity, and I'm honored and delighted to be involved in it. Yeah, just Google Little Kids Rock, and or go to YouTube, and it will pull you up some of these incredible kids and some of the other bands. There are major musicians that help support Little Kids Rock.
Can you talk about what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over time in the music business, and what somebody needs to do now as opposed to back in the 70s or 80s to be successful?
Sure. Okay, so David, there have been a lot of changes in the music industry.
Yeah.
Not all negative. If you just read what people say, you're going to get the impression that music is over. I saw recently Stevie Nicks said she's not even going to record another album. What's the point?
Mm.
Well, I think the problem with that is it assumes that people make and release records solely for the idea of making money.
Right.
And I think a lot of people actually do it for art.
Yes.
But clearly, there was a time in the 70s and the 80s when you toured and gigged in order to sell records.
Right.
Now, you make records in order to sell tickets.
Right.
And so there's been a change. But, the record industry and the music industry is not dead. $14 billion exchanged in 2015 in the music industry. That money's going somewhere. Now, it is clear it is not going to the artists.
Yeah.
It is absolutely clear that the artists need to get together. And I've been working on this for many years and with a lot of support. And we'll see what happens during the next year or two. But, the labels and streaming revenue clearly have a powerful lobby in place. Yeah. The artists do not. So we're working on doing something to make sure that $14 billion is redirected, at least in part, to the people that create the music. Now, it's an uphill battle, right? But, ask yourself this question. Is change impossible? And the answer is clearly no. It's not impossible. So that means those of us in the industry that may be smart, and certainly there are many people much smarter than me, it's up to us, having acknowledged it's not impossible, to find the solution. So there are people working on it right now. In fact, I had a great conversation with, of all people, Vinnie Colaiuta at the NAMM show, who is ardent and passionate about doing this.
Yes.
There's a business called Music Answers, and we're looking into that and seeing what we can do to help push them in the right direction. Going back to your question, how has it differed? Well, there's many ways that the music industry has changed. Clearly, there was a time when a label would only take a percentage of money from the sales of records. Yeah. The declining revenue left labels to seek to make up for that declining revenue by taking that more money back from the artist. Mm-hmm. So labels traditionally now are going to want a percentage of merchandise, tour money, and publishing. And you can't be the kid with his finger stuck in the dike, right? You know, I mean, the fact is, if I refused every offer from a label, every time the label sent me a deal that said we want 25% of the publishing, if I said no, that's off the table, none of my clients would ever make a deal, right?
Right.
So that's just the way it is right now. Now, we argue about percentage, and sometimes, you know, labels will be greedy. Sometimes they will want 100% of the publisher's share of publishing.
Wow.
I will not agree to that.
Sure.
Right?
That's a lot. Too much.
Hey, listen, I've seen deals where people want 75% of merchandise revenue. They want 50% of tour revenue.
Wow.
Now, the question is, what are you getting in return for this?
Right.
And that's the logical question people need to ask. You know, this is something that people ask me all the time about publishing. There'll be a young songwriter who's got tons of songs and they're good. And I'll tell him, well, you know, we need to look for a publishing deal. And he says, no, I'm going to own my own publishing. And I'm saying, well, you know, you can own 100% of nothing, right? And sometimes owning 50% of something is actually a lot smarter. The question is, owning your own publishing, of course, it's ideal, right? But the question is, who can you get to record? Who do you have the ability to get to record your songs?
Right.
Because that's how they generate money.
Right.
And if the answer is nobody, then guess what? And I'll sometimes have people call me and say, I need you to get these songs placed. And I'll say, well, that's really not what I do. But, you know, I would be willing, you know, if I trust in the song and I believe in it, then, you know, you and I can talk about, you know, you can pay me my hourly rate to do it, and that would be fine. Or you could give me a percentage of the publishing on the back end. And I've had artists say, well, no, because I want to own all my publishing. I'm like, well, what do you want from me? You know, I can't get blood from a stone.
Right.
Although I do tell artists this, and if I've told you this before, I apologize for repeating it. I tell artists all the time, pay your lawyer money up front. Right? Don't give your lawyer a percentage on the back end. Because lawyers will sometimes agree to do it because, although there's a chance they'll get nothing, there's a chance instead of a $5,000 fee that if the album takes off, you might get 50, 60, 75,000 down the road. So some lawyers will agree to do that because they'll say, well, the artist doesn't have $5,000. And my question is, if you don't have $5,000 to protect yourself at the beginning of your career, you should go get $5,000 to make sure you can protect yourself at the beginning of your career. But you know what? Some people are not willing to do that. Sure. My question for the artist is, if you agree to pay me on the back end, how is that a good deal for you? There's only one scenario that makes that a good deal for you, and that's if you fail.
Right.
If you fail, you've saved yourself $5,000. Right? You've got $5,000 worth of free legal. If you succeed, it's maybe cost you 50, 60, 70 grand that you wouldn't have had to pay in the first place. And I'm just suggesting that when you're starting off, making a deal that's only good if you fail may just raise the ire of the gods of karma, right? Don't do that, you know?
Yeah, make an investment in your own business, you know, that entrepreneurship.
Think about yourself as a business.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a dirty word, right? You can do it with integrity, with ethics.
You can do it with integrity, you can do it with ethics, and you can do it without compromising your music. You know, I don't mean to be flip, but I've told people before who've told me, no, I'm not going to have anything to do with the industry. I don't want nothing to do with the music. I'm just going to write my songs. And I'll say, well, you know what? I'll come and visit you when you're playing them on your porch, because that's the only place that you're going to play them. You know, you might not like it, but it's a business. You might not want anything to do with it. Great. I'm still going to respect you as an artist if you only play your music in your front porch. If you want to do something else with it, if you want to make a career out of it, if you want to get paid to do it, better think of it as a business.
Yeah, amazing. So where do you think it's all going, whether it's the next 5 or 10 years? I mean, obviously Napster and all of that changed everything. Where do you see the business of music going in the next 5 or 10 years, Paul?
Well, the money now is in tickets and T-shirts, right? It's in merchandise and it's in concerts. I don't think that's going to change.
Okay.
People still want to go see concerts. Now, where it's disappointing for me is the bigger concerts seem to be going, you know, the more desire seems to be going more theatrical and less musicianship based. There are certainly exceptions that keep raise my hopes. Bruno Mars, for example. He plays his set with great players. There's no tapes. There's no clicks. This is real music played by real players. And, Eric is a phenomenal drummer. So, and the bass player's a beast. So, his band lets you know that there's still a massive demand for great players playing great music.
Yes.
But it all comes back to where we started on the interview, right? It all comes back to the song. Play great songs, and people will come and see you live. Music, I think, I'm biased, but it's the purest of the arts for me because it's the easiest to have an emotional connection to.
Yes.
I remember having an emotional connection while reading Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, right? I had an emotional connection while reading that book.
Yeah.
But I have an emotional connection every time I listen to the music I love.
Yeah.
It can make you sad. It can make you cry. It can make you smile. It can make you, and live music can do all those things at once.
That's right.
Now, and as long as people still have that emotional connection, it's still going to go on. Now, the problem will become, how do we redress the balance with money? How do we make sure the money is going to the creative people? And, we need to get more control. As the labels that with their traditional 12 to 15% deals start to die like dinosaurs, eventually people will start to take control. The great news about the internet is if you define success, as we talked about it before, right? If success for you is being able to pay your bills, you don't need a label anymore.
Right.
In the 80s, you needed a label. But if your idea of success is to pay the bills, right, you don't need a label. You can release everything you want. You can record it in your bedroom. You can digitally master it, and you can sell it and gig and do your whole thing yourself. Now you're going to work your tail off.
Right.
They say that the best thing about being self-employed is you get to decide which 90 hours a week you work.
Right.
Once people understand that that's the case, then, what works like a charm, right? Let's do that.
Sure. You may not need a manager. You need a lawyer, obviously, and you need to create a business entity, as you were saying earlier, like an LLC. Do you need an agent?
It depends. Do you want to gig out of your immediate area? In which case, you're probably going to need an agent. Now, your manager will set you up with an agent. If you get the right manager, the manager will find the right agent for you. Now, remember, a lot of people think, well, I'm great. Why can't I just go on the road opening for one of these great bands? Right? And sure, a lot of people want to do that. But one of the things people forget is that there is a whole business facade behind these artists. So, for example, if a label is promoting the tour, the opening act is going to be signed to that label.
Yes.
The management company is promoting that tour. For the big management companies, the opening act is going to be signed to that management label because they're going to get as much bang for their buck as they possibly can. Now, there are mid-sized venues, 1,500 to 2,500 people, that a lot of bands will play and they won't have an opening act on the tour. Sometimes those venues will sign a deal to provide the opening act. Now, that opening act is going to have to be approved by the venue, by the artist, not just by the venue, but by the artist. But sometimes that can be a local networking thing that young musicians can do. I'll tell you something else. At nearly every big venue has a bar or something where people play outside. Right. Where there might be an opportunity for a local band to play and get heard. And I'm very lucky. I play a lot of gigs with a local guitar player who's an absolute monster guitar player. You should go look him up on YouTube. His name is Sean, S-H-A-U-N, Hopper, H-O-P-P-E-R. He is an incredible guitar player. He's a great guy. He's one of my best friends. I've been playing with him now for about 6 or 7 years. We do about maybe 20 shows a year.
That's great.
And I play percussion with him because he's one of these finger-picking, bashing on your guitar guys. And frankly, there's too many overtones for a drum kit to not step on him. So I play cajon or that type of instrument with him. He does headline gigs in theaters, 700-800 seats he can sell out. But he occasionally plays outside Ruth Eckerd Hall, which is a marvelous venue, by the way, here in Clearwater, Florida. Great company that runs it, great guys. Just a great place to play.
Hmm.
They have an outside bar, and Sean would get hired to play the outside bar before the opening act went on.
Yeah.
He was asked to do that once for Jeff Beck.
Oh.
And they had to come outside and ask him to stop because no one was going inside to watch the opening act.
That's great.
So, and by the way, he made nearly $1,000 in tips
Nice.
that day.
Yep.
So you can make money doing that too.
Sure.
But as a result of that, it got the attention of Ruth Eckerhol. And they said, well, we need to get you on our list to come back and open people. And now, he's opened for B.B. King and all these other folks. So, there's you network, you perform, you don't turn down gigs. You never know where the best opportunity is going to hit you.
Right.
Be prepared, be prepared. And when the chance comes, seize it,
Yeah, you just never know where it's going to go, right?
No, and I got a million stories from clients about that, where there was that one momentary decision. Should they seize this opportunity or should they not?
Yeah.
And for many of them, seizing it led to great things.
Yeah.
So,
any of those you can tell, Paul, or is that the client confidentiality thing?
Because some of them have talked about it on video, but Denny Sywell, I don't know if you know, Denny played with Wings, Paul McCartney and Wings for a long time.
Sure.
Denny was a jazzer out the Navy, growing up in New York, and was a huge fan of Elvin Jones.
Mm.
Denny went to see Elvin Jones when he was 17, and he watched him play in this New York club, and he just loved it. And at the end of the second set, Denny summoned up the courage to go and say hello. And when he was talking to him, suddenly found himself saying the words, "Can I sit in with you?"
Oh, my God. Wow.
He said it was a spontaneous decision. And Elvin laughed so much, he said, "You know what, kid? You can get up and play in the next set." So then he said, and he was terrified.
Yeah.
But he seized that moment. He got up and he played as he knew he could play. And when he came off stage, Elvin picked him up, hugged him, and told him he was going to be great.
Holy
and
cow.
Denny says, I never looked back from that moment. If I hadn't seized that moment, if I'd chickened out, who knows what would have happened, because that gave him the confidence to go forward.
Wow.
And nearly every musician has that thing,
It's fantastic. What a great story of taking a risk like that. You never know how it's going to work out.
You have to take a risk. You have to be prepared, though, because you can't blow it, right? But, practice. Be ready. Be prepared. And when the opportunity comes, grab it with both hands.
It's fantastic. Great advice. What are you still practicing at this point on the drums or the cajon? What are you working on with your own drumming, Paul?
Oh, listen, nonstop. I practice all the time.
Wow.
It's funny. I have practice pad in my office. There you go. I got some drumsticks.
There you go. Right.
I don't practice with these because these were a gift from Steve Gadd. So I sit these on my table and I don't.
Nice.
They're right here.
Yeah.
I practice because I'm not really a percussionist. I'm really a kit drummer who's now started playing a lot of percussion.
Okay.
I'm practicing hand patterns. I'm lucky. I represent some great percussionists. So people like Richie Bravo, Pedrito Martinez, Giovanni Hidalgo. So they give me tips.
Yeah.
And then I feel completely humiliated as I'm unable to do the things they teach me. Yeah, I don't care what you do. Life is about learning. Every day should be a new challenge. If you don't learn something new, during the course of a day, it's a bit of a waste of time.
Right. So for you then, Paul, what would you say to an up-and-coming musician, the top couple of things musically that they need to have in order to have that preparation, both musically and in business?
Musically, a lot of us forget that there is one thing that ties all great musicians together, and they all have great ears. They all can listen and discern and play. So I tell every musician, as I've said a couple of times before, play for the song, right? Just because you can play it doesn't mean you should play it unless the song works. To be a good musician, you have to listen. Music is a conversation as much as anything else, especially when you're playing with other musicians. I go see bands, and I can tell within 5 minutes whether these guys are listening to each other. Because there is a tendency amongst young players who are just learning and they're getting to where they want to be to learn their part and play their part. So they're not paying attention. They're not listening. And you know what? If you're not playing live to a click, and I know a lot of people play live to a click, but if you're not playing to a click, there is an ebb and flow to the time. That's not a bad thing, as long as it's not ebbing and flowing too much. But, you know, going with that gives an organic quality to music, which gives it a human touch. But if you don't listen, it's going to ebb and flow unevenly. So the biggest thing I can tell people is listen. And also listen. Don't just listen when you're playing. Listen to every type of music, because you're going to get, you know, I get frustrated. I try not to let it show. But when musicians call me and they say, I'm a heavy metal drummer, I say, okay, well, you know, you realize that that's about 2% of record sales. So you're really limiting your ability to make a career. No, that's all I want to play. Well, I mean, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But maybe a suggestion might be, why don't you just be a drummer instead of being a heavy metal drummer? Why don't you learn how to play a bossa nova? Why don't you do a wedding every now and again? You know, because they pay pretty well, you know? So musically, I would say, listen to everything, always be prepared, seize the day, and when you're playing, listen to everybody else and play for the song. From a business perspective, unless you're independently wealthy, you're just going to have to work at it. You need to understand how to copyright your music. You need, because lawyers don't do that anymore. You do it online. Go to copyright.gov, upload your song. You need to understand how publishing works. And you can do that by reading about it. You know, I mean, there's classic books that will explain those things to you. Go get them, read them. You know, and network and talk to people and realize you should be kind to everybody. Treat everybody fairly, because they're, you know, people will hire you. If you're a guitar player, don't hang out just with guitar players. If you're a drummer, don't hang out just with drummers, because no drummer's going to hire you because they want the gig themselves. Right? So, and none of this is secret. None of this is even beyond. You know, a lot of people will listen and they'll say, well, that's all so obvious. And you know what it is? But it still manages to get past about 85% of the people that call my phone, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good advice. I mean, just obviously have your music ready, but take care of business. That's really the important thing. Paul Quin, this has been a great interview, really a great music interview, but also feels like a great business lesson. Thank you so much for being on Musicians on the Record.
David, entirely my pleasure. And thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for promoting these stories. You're part of the solution. And it's my pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, my honor. And thank you for protecting the artist and being one of the good ones. Thanks, Paul.
Be kind. Thanks, David.
I wonder if she's gonna say there ain't no sunshine when she's gone, and this house just ain't no home anytime she goes away. There ain't no sunshine when she's gone.